I see that you've said this morning you see a gradual business recovery in May and June. I wonder if you could tell us, does that back to what kind of levels? When you talk about that recovery, back to what kind of levels of business?
Well, Anna, this is not easy to say. For us, forecasts of more than 2 weeks at the moment are more than challenging because the environment is so volatile. What we clearly saw and believe is that April was the worst month which we see this year because April had the lockdown in Europe and in the US, North America, and both together for us are 75% of our normal sales. And we are seeing now that Europe is already ramping up. 30% of more than 30% of our plants in Europe are restarting now, already in production. North America is somewhat behind us. I think the pandemic there is 2-3 weeks behind Europe. And by that, the restart is more expected mid of May. Now, taking this into account, this is to be expected that after this very worst April, the next months will be better. To what level? I would like to tell you in July only. As I said, hard to predict.
How elastic, Wolfgang, is demand for your products? I mean, when I need new tires, I buy new tires. But I'm sure there are a lot of people out there, especially if they're facing difficult employment times, that are going to try and drive less, maybe get a few more miles out of the tires they already have.
In principle, this is right, Matt, but I would like to use the example of China now, which had the lockdown in the first quarter. And there actually we are observing now that April, as an example, sales are above prior year. And same experience at the moment in Europe. Again, very early to talk about a long-term effect. But what we are noticing is that people are coming back to the showrooms now as the dealers are starting to open. And volumes are up and are nicely moving towards prior year level. So it seems to be that for these products, people are coming back, getting in the showrooms fast and replacing the tires, which they could not do for the 4 or 6 weeks before soon.
That's interesting insight as to what's going on in China. In terms of the way that you're preparing your balance sheet for this period, Wolfgang, what about the dividend? Are you going to be able to pay out dividends as you had planned? I didn't see an update on that this morning.
No, there is no update this morning. We will have our annual shareholder meeting in the second week of July. And with the invitation to this shareholder meeting, there will be finally a recommendation for the dividend payment from our supervisory board.
What about the restructuring? I think you wanted to reduce your staff by 20,000. Does that still seem like the right size, or are you going to need to make deeper cuts?
Well, we are clearly distinguishing between the long-term structural adjustments which we want to make and have to make, and the short-term measures. At the moment, what we are discussing mostly, obviously, is short-term flexibility to adapt our cost to this extremely volatile downturn markets which we are seeing. And then there is this long-term. The long-term plans are unchanged at the moment, as we, as I mentioned, only see the next 2 to probably 4 weeks of sales. As soon as we have more clarity and we can better predict how our markets will be in the next 2 to 3 to 4 years, we have to probably revise our program, as we call it, the Conti-C program, that we might have to adapt it to another level because we see that the future volume expectations are different than they have been before.
Wolfgang, here in Germany, you can use the Kurzarbeit program, and other European countries have similar schemes. Have you taken advantage of those programs in countries where you can, and how much of your staff has been on that, if so?
Yes, we did take advantage of that. It's very helpful to allow for flexibility of the cost and of the load of your production sites. We have used in Europe those programs. There is, in some states of the US, furlough, which somewhat has a similar effect. And overall, we had more than 60% of our people I think 2 weeks ago, which were in the one or other type of these programs on a worldwide basis.
Do you see, Wolfgang, do you see any conflict between taking advantage of those programs and paying a dividend? Some companies that have been relying on government support at this time have decided not to pay money to shareholders as well.
Well, if I refer to the German situation, probably first comment, dividend paid out this year is for last year. So it's only a delayed payment for the performance of the company of last year. And secondly, if I take Germany, the money which is paid out for this short-term work is in the end money which the company has paid in Germany Agency for Work, as it's called. And for Conti, for example, this pay-in sum which Conti itself paid was more than 400 million over the last 10 years. Our employees paid about the same amount into it, and the amount we are receiving now from this fund is a small fraction of this sum. So no, I don't see a conflict between those two numbers.
What kind of time frame do you see, Wolfgang, until we get back to normal demand? Do you think 2021 looks normal again for Continental?
Well, very hard to predict. We actually don't have a final view on this. And the question is anyway, what is normal? But at the moment, we concentrate on short term, and we believe it will take some weeks, if not some months, to finally get a clearer picture of what 2021 and then 22 and 23 will be like.
Have you asked the German government, or you talked to the German government about the possibility of stimulus, of a cash for clunkers type of deal?
Yes, there is a discussion between the automotive industry and the government. I think 2 days ago was the last discussion about it. Automotive industry is supporting and asking for any program like in the US it was called 10 years ago, the Cash for Clunker, supports incentives to buy cars. And the discussion is ongoing. Discussion 2 days ago ended in a way that it was said we will think about how this could be put together, and we will talk together in about 4 weeks from now. So that will be beginning of June.
The beginning of June. What about your production facilities, Wolfgang? As you mentioned that some of them have come back, but I think substantially they remain closed. Update us on that. And how does production look different in the aftermath of the virus in terms of what you need to spend on social distancing and other measures?
Well, Europe, about 30% of the plants are ramping up now. The number was at more than 80%, which was ramped down in the peak times. In the US, it is somewhat delayed, and probably starting mid of May, we will see these ramp-ups. In China, we are above 80% of the production load, which is back now. Well, yes, obviously, we have used the last days and weeks to analyze not only each plant, but each workplace, how much of distance this workplace can keep to his colleagues, what are the risks of infection, and for each single workplace, we have single protection measures for our workers, be that a mask or be that even more protection. Some of the work processes have been changed in a way that people can keep the distance which is required. We are confident, and we have set it up in a way that we will be in a position to deliver what our customers want from us, even when it comes soon back to the old levels which we have produced in those production sites. It will bear some additional cost, but this is too early to quantify that.